Welcome back after Easter Sunday. And yeah, I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend, time of rest. Speaking of rest, I know I haven't done a podcast in a couple weeks because just that. Sometimes you need to take a step back when you realize things aren't going in the direction you want them to go to. So this morning, as always, I've got my co-host, Coach Rob, with me, and we're going to talk a lot about stuff and a little bit about what's been going on in the 250 class and the 450 class between Webb and Sexton. And truthfully, I believe that what we saw from Sexton was the kind of ride that we saw at Hangtown, I believe, last year when he went from last to first, which nobody's talking about, but that ride was spectacular, with him being almost a second a lap faster than his rival Cooper Webb was magnificent. So, Coach, what do you think of this? So here, let me, before I get into some of the lap times.
And kick his ass though.
It's been a tough week recovering from my gunshot wounds. Hopefully that heals quick. But
for Chase Sexton, he keeps his championship hopes alive.
I just have it play one
The
more.
points leader, Cooper Webb, is a distant second, but will bring home valuable points.
We'll come back next weekend and kick his ass though.
I'd love here. What do you think about this whole winning by 20 seconds?
No, it's amazing. Even said to Michaela when we were watching, I said, it feels like we're watching Sexton that summer that he and Tomac outdoors were, just the gap was enormous. And as always, Cooper Webb, he is not afraid to dish it out, but he also takes responsibility for it. And I really appreciated that. What I would have liked to have seen is Sexton this weekend, when he landed, turn around and shoot him again. That would have just absolutely raised the roof inside Cooper's world. So, nope, Cooper owned it. I like the fact that he gave Sexton credit. He even said, I don't know how he's going through those whoops so fast. And you got to give credit where credit is due. Sexton's on a next level. And it was actually, poetry in motion to watch. I absolutely loved it.
What I thought was crazy was that normally Webb is not the fastest qualifier ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's won more races than he's been the fastest qualifier. And he comes out and he's totally ready to do exactly what he said was kick Sexton's ass. And he did that by becoming the fastest qualifier. And I didn't check to make sure if his heat race was faster than Sexton's was. But still, he had everything set up. He was right behind Sexton in the main event, and the dude just blew his doors off in a 25 lap main event, 22 to 25 laps, depending upon their 54 seconds, 51 seconds. Losing by 20 seconds is a considerable margin. That is like kind of the difference between a top privateer to a factory rider. That's a big deal.
Well, on the lap time, what would that put it? I'm not going to say a half a lap, but it's greater than a quarter, less than a half. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of time. Something else you just made me think about when you made that comment. Sexton used to work with Stewart. And remember how Stewart was renowned for not showing all of his cards in practice? The one that's probably the most memorable is at Daytona when the gate drops and he comes out of that right-hander and seat bounces that wall. Hadn't done it in practice, didn't do it in the qualifier. Then when the main event came and it was like, I don't know, I don't want to embellish the number, 2, 3, 4 seconds a lap faster because everybody else was hitting the wall and James was just bouncing it. Now, yes, it didn't end too well for James because he clipped it and knocked himself silly. But that's what Sexton reminded me of when you just made that comment. And I think back, that's what Sexton reminds me of. If you look at the fact he tried super hard in qualifying, I mean, he looked up at that board several times thinking that he got the top notch, didn't get it. And then it makes you wonder, it's like, main event comes out and we saw something, and again I have to quote Cooper Webb, like, how's he going through those whoops so fast? So I don't know, props to Sexton. He definitely is getting free rent in Cooper's head, But I don't think that's a bad thing for the fans. I don't think that's a bad thing for Cooper. And not to state the obvious, right? All it takes is one silly little thing to happen because the points race is so close and it could be game over. Hate to bring up a sour subject like Tomac blowing his Achilles out, something like that, or taking a nose digger or a mechanical and you don't finish the moto, it's over. And we've seen it when Tomac blew his heel out. What was there, 1 round or 2 rounds left? It wasn't very much.
Did he do it at Denver or?
Yeah, but it was at his home. I believe it was at his home track.
Yeah. So it was just 1 left.
Yeah.
So,
here in the.
But I mean, here lap 5 was Sexton's fastest lap. Cooper Webb was lap 3. But let me just open this up, and they're not really showing the average. So 52, 52, 51. And so basically, it looks like after lap 4, there's a 52, 52, 53, 52, 53, 53, 54. So he had a good, you could see the track was deteriorating, but he had a few laps in there that were the 51s here. I hate how Supercross Live got rid of their PDF website. They went to something else. So here's 53, 52, boom, 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 53, 52. So it wasn't, but then basically when Sexton was doing 53s, he was doing 55s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a.
Well, and think about this. We heard on the broadcast that Sexton was working on his late race endurance, and we know that Webb's been focusing on the whoops. It's nothing new there, but it's just astounding that these two guys are so hyper competitive. And it was interesting to me that just one section of the track could have that much of an impact because, I don't think anybody that enjoys watching the races would say that Cooper is slow anywhere on the track. It just puts into perspective how incredibly lightning fast Sexton was in those whoops, which was ridiculous. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. We don't have to get on the subject of him going to Kawasaki, but you can't imagine that.
I mean, we
Sexton,
can.
Well, at some point, Sexton, he struggled last year with the bike setup, and right now it looks like the bike is set up quite beautifully. It's handling, doing everything he wants it to do. And do you want to vacate? I mean, contracts are signed, and it's done. I've heard it's all but done. I've heard it is done, but I haven't seen the signed contract, so I don't want to be that asshole that says I know, but people I've spoken to have said it's been done for a couple months.
Well, the question is what's happening to Jason Anderson? Because I believe Prado's got a couple-year deal.
Yeah, Prado is coming. Yeah, Prado's got a couple of years. Sexton goes over there. So Triumph for Anderson will probably be Triumph because it sounds like Barsha is going to get the nod over at Ducati. I still personally believe that Tomac, I think, is at the top of the list for Ducati. If he decides not to because he doesn't want to shake down a platform, then I think that opens it up for Roczen and or Barsha. I think Barsha will go there only because he's pretty familiar with the entire TLD staff. It's just a bunch of musical chairs when you boil it all down. I don't know if Anderson would want to go over to Triumph. I don't know. Nobody knows, right? That's one of the most mystique things about Bobby Hewitt is when something goes wrong, no matter how much this industry has the ability to run its mouth, nobody understood why he left Husky. And nobody understands what happened at Triumph. I mean, it's the best kept secret. I don't know what Bobby does. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, we hear about whose wives have slept with what team members and mechanics and who's doing what and saying what. But then when it comes to Bobby Hewitt, you never hear a single word. I mean, How does he build a 250 program and then get kicked out? How does he get the Triumph program? I've heard some things behind the scenes, but I don't feel that I'm at liberty to talk about what happened at Triumph. But yeah. I think Jason Anderson floats somewhere around there. But then again, if Jordan Smith is going to get the move up to 450, now I don't know how the points are going to work out, if he'll have to or not, or does his contract, because that's what we're hearing is that his contract was to go 450, that being Jordan Smith. So then at that point, where does Anderson go? Does he end up over maybe replacing Chisholm at Hep Suzuki? I mean, if you look at the musical chairs, Honda's locked in, Cowie's locked in, KTM's locked in, so it just makes you wonder.
Yeah, and Moto Fever says that I hope they try to keep Kitchen as he moves to 450s too. And see, that's the hard part is just
That's the one. That's the
there's
biggest.
only a couple
hit-
rides, and there's
Yeah.
some really good riders, but
Yeah,
mean,
he
we
hit the nail
saw-
on the head. Levi Kitchen is the biggest moving part of the 250 to 450 right now. It's very observant on his behalf. The Levi Kitchen is the big pin in this entire. Who's going to get? Because think about it. If Sexton doesn't go to Cowie, the heir apparent would be Levi Kitchen. He's raced well. He's backed it up. He has the results. So yeah, there's a lot that's on the table in that regards. The 250 program, you think about the guys that need to move up or want to work up, the RJ Hampshires, where does he land? So these are the things. If Husky is going to continue to keep its program going, do they even keep a 250 program? They just move all their money into 450 and take RJ and keep Malcolm. That's one of the things I've heard rumbling around. Then I don't know. I love this. We could talk about all the teams and the what ifs, because like think about how deep Triumph's field their 250 program is. I mean, we haven't seen Styles Robertson's and Jalik and those guys because of injuries, but those guys all fly as well. They're just injured. So I don't know. I haven't spoken to Styles Robertson's dad. I don't know if he got a 1 year or 2 year deal. I don't know if he's coming back. I don't know, Johnny, if you've heard anything or if maybe anyone in the chat room's heard, but we know that Jalik is coming back. We know that Jordan Smith's got a multi-year deal. We know Faulkner's got a multi-year deal.
which I like the Jordan Smith deal with
Mhm.
Triumph. I think he's
Yeah.
a good fit there, and it seems Faulkner's. If I was any sort of upper management, I'd be pressuring Faulkner. We know he's a good rider, and I don't know
He
if
looked good this weekend.
he's just not getting out of his own way, because everyone can kind of
Well,
relate to that.
You got to remember, though, he had that brain surgery, and I don't care what anybody says. When you have your scalp opened up and you've had some neurosurgery done on your brain, it's going to take a while. There's a lot of inflammation and swelling that goes in it. I'm amazed that he can even process the speed of a motorcycle based on what he went through with his brain. Good news is he's got a multi-year deal. I think it even includes a 450. We know that Jordan's.
But Coach,
Jordan
that was the
Smith.
same thing with PC, though. He was
Mhm.
supposed to have the 450 deal.
Yeah,
And-
but think about it. If Triumph wants one of those heavy ringers like a Faulkner, that had to be part of the new contract. It's just the way that the musical chairs fall and where some of these guys are at in their career. Faulkner is an established rider. You can't argue that. It's pretty hard to argue with anybody on the PC team right now, except injuries keep plaguing them. McAdoo, Levi Kitchen, all those guys are legit dudes. So the one that has surprised me while we're speaking of teams is I'm surprised that I'm drawing a mental blank. Masterpool. I mean, we heard he had a finger issue, but then is it to what extent could a finger had gotten hurt that he's missed the entire Supercross series? I mean, we have Barsha, who has a huge laceration. He's riding. He cuts it during the week, and he's riding on Saturday with handguards. You've got Volan, who is out there with a handbrake. I mean, I know it's foot related, but how bad can the finger be with Masterpool that he's not riding? You've got McAdoo. That was a big injury. Levi Kitchen, that was a big injury. Masterpool, Seth's out on the track, and who's the fifth rider? Drew Adams doesn't officially have a spot on the team, but they started this year with 6 riders. Who am I forgetting? I apologize. Oh, Marchbanks. I'm sorry. Marchbanks is out there. So I just am curious if anybody's heard what's going on. So, but I see right here the ET3 not being back on Yamaha is going to be tough. Agreed. But Deegan's contract is taking the lion's share of that money from that team.
And Cooper Webb got a pretty good pay raise as well. So I don't think anyone was really even expecting Eli to be racing this year.
No,
let alone now racing next year.
That's another dynamic that changes it, because his contract is, if he wins the Supercross title, it's an automatic renewal and a double his salary. So, what are we down to? 9 points? I think we started at 11 this weekend, or 12, and now we're down to 8 or 9. So it's going to come down to the wire, but it's not just about, for Cooper. Yes, it's $1 million, $1.5 million bonus at the end of the season, not to mention the weekend bonuses. But it's also about riding. Look at how Barsha rode this weekend. Is it any surprise that the last couple of weeks he looks like a fire's under his feet? Yeah, because he's racing for a job. And same with Ken Roxon. Um, Ken is fighting for a spot. I'm hearing that he's pretty much re-upped back with Hep Suzuki. So he's got his own deal there with Progressive with his own, they'll keep his own rig like they're doing right now. But yeah, it's a lot of musical chairs that are going on. And I know every year it's a little bit difficult. It's different, but yet it's the same. But when you look at the 250, I was thinking about this when we were watching the race over the weekend. When you look at that 450 class, right? Remember when McElrath was doing well in the 250 class? Remember when Ferrandis was doing well in the 250 class? Christian Craig, Malcolm Stewart. You look at 22 guys on the gate, and I forgot what the beginning of the season was when we had Hunter and Jed in there. You look and you add up all of the 250 champions that were lining up on the gate on the 450 class. And now the fact that this year there's a half a dozen guys that their job is, their contracts are up this year. So it's really crazy when you think about we're sitting here with just a couple of races left and how decimated the season is, or how decimated the field is with, half a dozen races left, less than that. But who would have thought that the point spread would be as big as it is with the depth of that field? And yes, we've had a lot of winners, but we're back to, you could either win or you could end up 8th the next weekend and nobody's surprised.
Yeah, I am surprised that like this weekend, I mean, I said it in my track breakdown that the whoops were going to be the benefactor for this, and whoever could stay on top of them is going to come out on top, and the people that are going to try to jump through them are going to just be slower. And that's exactly what ended up happening. But that's a small little caveat, is somebody that I saw that was continuing to blitz him was Malcolm. Mm-hmm. And usually he's the best rider in the whoops. So going back to, this was the best ride of Sexton since Hangtown of 2024, where he went from last to first. This was just a decimation of the entire field, which is not a good look for Webb, because you want to pressure this guy. And what he's doing to him with the whole gun deal, he's taking his trademark and he's trying to get into his head. And if Sexton gets out of his own way, we all know that he's faster than almost anybody as far as Jet and everyone combined. Not combined, but he's the fastest rider at times, as long as he's getting out of his own way. And so with 3 rounds to go, if he wins every race and Webb gets second, well, now it's a tie points lead for the season finale. And by default, Sexton wins just because he has more race wins under his belt. So it's really a matter of Webb has to beat Sexton, whether it's for first or whether it's for third or whatever. He has to make sure that he is in front of Sexton for the rest of the season.
Yeah, 100%. And this is where, unfortunately, Sexton's starts have gotten Johnny on the spot. I think his worst position going in the first turn is like 3rd. And then by the time he navigates the next straightaway, he's right there. And then by the end of the first lap, he's out front. So no, it's and this is something that I say in my performance camps all the time. Practice your starts like it's this scenario. On the amateur side, I always say, imagine that you're tied 2-1 going into Saturday, and it all boils down to this. And if you could practice with that kind of focus and intensity, not that you're trying to like take the fun and the enjoyment out, but I was thinking about it when the gate was getting ready to drop on Saturday night. They had McElrath in between Webb and Sexton, and I'm thinking, if you could pull the computer chip out of each one of those riders' brains as the gate's getting ready to drop, you've got Sexton who's on the inside of Webb, and you can't tell yourself you got to get a good start, because as soon as you say don't blow it, it's exactly what you're going to do. You've got McElrath who's thinking I'm right in between the 2 points guys, and he's been getting great starts as usual. Then you've got Webb who's like, darn it, maybe McElrath can get a good start, squeeze him over, or Webb's thinking, if I get a really good jump, I'm coming left as fast as I possibly can. And it not in regards to being dirty, right? Just controlling the race from the front. But this is the whole idea of, I always say, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And knowing exactly how you can, Johnny, you talk about this all the time, the amount of hours it takes to be considered an expert at anything. And at this point is not the time to think. You turn the left logic side of the brain off, you turn the right creative on, and you just execute. But looking at what we saw on Saturday night, it's going to take something. And I hate to say you need a track that doesn't have two straights that have whoops. Johnny, have you looked at the tracks that we have left? Do we have any more tracks that have multiple lanes of whoops, not to mention back-to-back whoops?
No, I haven't, but I will here.
Because that'll be interesting. All joking aside, right? We've heard in the past that team managers have had the whoops cut down. Ironically, it's a different color than what Sexton's on. So as much as you hate to say that those things happen, we know that they do happen. I hope that whatever the track layout and the design that we have tentatively laid out, I hope they build them big, and may the best man win. And, you know, I don't want to put words in Cooper's mouth, but just like he did on Saturday night, he's like, look, I don't know how he was going through those whoops so fast. Webb gave credit where credit was due. If Webb gets beat straight up on both get clean starts and Webb just simply can't hold pace with Sexton, Webb will own it and give credit where credit's due. He won't be happy about it, but he's not going to make some lame excuse like a lot of the guys do. Still chasing setup, you know, oh, we went the wrong way with this, went the wrong way with that. You never hear Webb, whether he won or he didn't, you never hear him saying anything about bike setup. Nothing. He always takes full responsibility. So it's going to be a Donnybrook here for the last couple of rounds, that's for sure. And as is the 250 class. I mean, we saw some great racing this weekend.
Here, I'm trying to look.
Oh, you've got the track maps there. Cool. And it's especially like this weekend where we had two straight, you know, back-to-back straights. And of course, we know that they sometimes can't be to the exact design once they start building it, but
yeah, depending upon rain or whatnot.
Sure.
Pittsburgh, one tiny whoop section. I mean, they're all tiny, which is kind of a bummer.
Well, that could work to Webb's advantage, of course. And
Denver,
the beautiful part about
interesting.
The beautiful part about racing is, you know, it's always going to include the start. It could have a track that's really conducive.
In the sand, I guess that's probably the best one there.
Yeah. And of course, like you just mentioned, with it being open air stadiums, rain could bring in the equalizer. And that was something that I was going to ask you about, Johnny. When you go back to the races that are muddy, why is it in your opinion that if you look at the top guys, right, and then the mud comes, why is it that the privateers all of a sudden jump up as high as they do, in your opinion?
Gosh, thinking about it, it's because the factory bikes are more on a level playing field. They can't use the crazy suspension to navigate through the ruts, and they don't have the crazy torque to be able to come out of a corner and just triple onto something that's getting all gnarly and bumpy. Everyone's kind of just stuck with paddle tires and feet off the pegs and just riding around. I think it takes away the factory advantage on the bikes, which is a little bit, you would think maybe not as much, because having a usable powertrain for the factory bikes would almost be an advantage for mud as well. Because sometimes, you know, if you're just spinning and you're not able to hook up, how are you going to be able to do like the big finish line or something? But I think sometimes when it gets as bad, then you end up seeing the privateers do really well because everyone's not doing anything. So it's kind of like who can just keep it on two wheels is sort of the leveling the playing field. I mean, at like Seattle and gosh, what was it, 2 weekends ago, with the rain, the factory bikes were still able to come out on top because it just made it was better traction. It was deep ruts. The track was a little bit gnarlier as far as more technical. But when you have a race where it's just complete, just mud shot, there's no technicality about that. It's just basically rolling around and trying to just keep it on 2 wheels, but you're going to blow up your bike, and the factory guys are going to blow up their bike too. So is it really worth it? So
See, I have to agree with Michael in the chat room. To me, I feel like and this is just, we're just spitballing here. This is not, science here, but I just was really dumbfounded. It's like the conditions got absolutely miserable. And then all of a sudden you see the rise of the privateers into those top 8 positions. And I couldn't help but wonder, it's like, are these factory guys, and I'm going to use the word spoiled, and I say it politely, tongue in cheek, they're so acclimated to, like, unless the conditions are ideal, they can't ride. And you look at Sexton running in over the finish line, running into the announcer's tower. You look at Vial going from wherever he was, top 10 to last place. And with Vial, it was crazy because it's not like he hasn't ridden in mud before. And it got my mind thinking a lot the last couple of weeks. It's like, you think back, and Johnny, you've been around the factory guys a lot. If you and I had if we had 2 bikes, and you and I were going to go to a race that we knew was going to be a mud fest, we'd bring our practice bike, and more than likely we'd race our practice bike, because we just know the power and all the A kits and everything else that you've got invested are a moot point when you have those types of conditions. And I think it's just interesting. You would think that regardless, the best rider would always win. You know what I mean? If you look at like a MotoGP, the top guys, when it gets wet, they're still up the same, not, there's always that what could go wrong kind of thing. But I just found it very interesting in the Supercross side. We just had this breakout with these top privateers and satellite teams. And it's like, well, if the equipment is that good and the riders are that good, then why were they able to get stumped by privateers? And I totally get what you're saying. When the conditions are ideal and you've got the mapping and you've got all the other little tricks and unattainables, as you call them. It's just, I found it very interesting that we say that the mud's the equalizer, and it's interesting. It becomes the equalizer for the privateers to get up there. And it seemed like that became the demise of the factory guys. I thought it was a very interesting paradigm shift.
Well, Coach, because I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go for it. No, go for it.
The top 15 guys, both moto and supercross, you give them a factory bike, and they all have the potential of leading the race, getting on the podium, and more than likely getting a top 5 finish.
With the caveat.
The caveat is the technology, is the motorcycle. It's the
but one little caveat: you've got to give the top privateers at least a month to shake down the bike. Look at when Kevin Moran's got that opportunity to go to Butler Brothers. He had like 1 day on the bike, and he performed worse on a factory bike than he did on his own bike. That's the only other problem that has to be factored in.
Yeah, you got to feel comfortable about something. Yeah. It takes a while to break in.
That's
like
the hard
a lot
part.
of the times, I've seen riders want to put if they do have a race bike, they want to put their suspension and the motor in the frame of the practice bike, just because it's more broken in, and they just feel more comfortable with it. But I'm saying, going through a whoop section like what Sexton did this weekend, where it's all chopped and you're going to die, and have the confidence that motorcycle is going to kick side to side, but it's going to find its way back and you're going to be okay. Versus, I wanted to talk about this, and Road to Recovery doesn't have it up yet. But when I saw this, I thought to myself, if Jerry had factory suspension, would he have crashed the way he did? And I don't know, Coach, if you know what happened this weekend, but this individual who's been a top privateer and a well-spoken young man, 2 digits is legit. He, I believe, had his, what did he say? He had his T3 through T7 fused. And the crash doesn't look that bad. Okay, cool. Do they have it? I will put that in the link in the description. I tried looking for it for his Road to Recovery here. But I didn't see it yet. But as soon as they have it up there, I will have it on my channel for everyone to help them out here.
I didn't know Road Recovery had something set up, because I'll do the same thing.
Yeah,
obviously.
I don't think they have it yet. But looking at this,
Yeah.
comes around, seat bounces, triple ends, cases it,
Right there. That second one is what gets him.
and just lands right on his head. It's fairly slow, but
Yep.
I mean, it's jumping off of a playground onto your head.
Yeah.
And
He's probably what, 8-10 feet off the ground. It's not like he's, jumping the finish line, jump and lands on his neck. Case,
bounce.
huckabuck, right on his neck. And
And
what's, go ahead,
my,
excuse me.
because I know Jerry, and I've spoken to him many times, and this is where I go back to give these guys a factory bike, and like I said, they will be leading the race, potentially getting a podium inside the top 5. For this, I know Jerry's got good equipment, but he doesn't have the unobtainium stuff that the factory bikes have. And I saw over the weekend, Sexton, Webb, these guys cased this exact same thing, and the bike just took it. The bike just soaked it up. And for me, I don't think that Jerry Robin is relatively any less talented than the top guys that are on factory bikes. Yes, you could probably argue a little bit, but I'm digressing. My point being is he knows how to take a hit. He knows how to case a jump, and the bike somewhat failed him there.
Well, he said that he tapped the rear brake just a little bit, or his foot slipped. I can't remember what he said.
Yeah, he said that he hit the rear brake a little bit when he was coming off the seat bounce, and that's what made him case it. Right.
Yeah.
But my point is the motorcycle didn't completely soak it up.
No. Well, if you look at where he lands, unfortunately, he's a little bit on the front side of it, just his placement of his bike, and that's what just caused the rear end to huckabuck him. Yeah, it won't let you pause it without that arrow in the middle of it.
Yeah, damn it. And then that just gets smaller.
Yeah.
Here.
But see, this is where our sport is just ruthless, because let's say that he didn't hit the rear brake. Let's say he got wheel spin off the face of it. Do we start saying that the jump and the timing was not well designed? Because I totally agree with you. I mean, if the 40 guys in both gates have factory suspension, you could see that when you watch the 250 race. I think it was Seth Hamaker. He was coming towards the camera, and he comes through the one section, and the jump is all, I apologize, I can't remember where it was on the track, but he kind of goes through that rut, and the bike just kind of kicks, to your point exactly. And I said to Michaela when we were watching, I said, if that was my bike, I'd be on my head right now. And his bike, he just stays on the throttle, and it just corrects itself and goes right through it. But I don't know how you solve it, because
he just framed it. And
yeah, but he could have framed it if he got wheel spin. He could have framed it if his foot slipped off. And that's what makes our sport so hard, is we don't want to see a track that's easy. And then when you get a track, and to your point exactly, Johnny, this wasn't like a high-speed get off where it was a big risk. This was just the timing, casing, and then just the free fall.
But maybe I'm being more literal about it.
Okay.
If he had both main events,
Mm-hmm.
you had the 250 guys lap up to 7th place.
Mm-hmm.
You had the 450 guys lap up to 8th place. The only guys that didn't really lap was factory riders. And I don't see the discrepancy in talent that far to show what happens on the track as far as results. Because if you put all those guys on the same equipment, they do not lap up to 7th place. Okay, maybe they lap to 16th or something.
Yeah.
But they don't. And when I saw this, I just was like, dude, this is a guy that has been inside the top 10 multiple times and for years running. Why hasn't this guy had the opportunity to be on a factory team, right? Because to me, this doesn't seem as much of like, yeah, cool, he made a mistake. He hit his rear brake on the lip of a jump, right? How many times do we see other guys make mistakes? Better equipment I believe would have helped save this.
Mhm.
And that's the problem I have with the sport at the moment, is just they should not be lapping up to 7th place, because these riders are so talented. There should be another class to them or something, because it's just, lack of a better word, it's not fair. Life isn't fair.
But you bring up a good point though, Johnny. If you partition them off, right? You've talked a lot about the idea, just have a premier class, 1 gate drop. Let's say there's 10 guys on there. But you're talking about having a second class. Well, that second class is still going to be running the same bike setup that they're out there right now with the premier class. It wouldn't look as bad because they're not lapping up to 8th place. But you're not changing the circumstances or the situation. The track is still going to be the same. The riders and the bikes are going to still be the same. How would it be different in your opinion?
See, that's I mean, for something like this, he still would have been on the same equipment, and so
Mhm.
the bike would have reacted the same way.
Yeah.
I don't. We're live, coach. I don't have the answer for
Sure.
that.
No, that's why I
do-
appreciate the opportunity to banter about it, because it sucks that it happened.
Well, this
But
is the same thing that, like, I have a problem with sometimes the futures, and then also at the super motocross stuff, when they have the little kids on the 60s and 50s out there, and then they tell them, "Oh no, don't hit the giant finish line because
Sure.
it's too dangerous." And I'm like, well, why put these kids on a professional track that has a 10-foot lip that then goes to a 3-foot lip? It is going to be dangerous. They don't have the
Sure.
proper equipment or the experience to maintain what that track needs as far as just the level of skill. So therefore the track should be dumbed down. So maybe you have a sister series or something that has the track's not as dangerous, right? Like, how many red
Maybe.
flags have we had in the 250 class? We've had
Yeah.
5 out of the 14 races we've had. That's 1/3, almost 1/3 of the entire races where something gets red flag because there's a rider that needs help, right?
But remember though, they did try that. Remember, they would cut the track down on Saturday night, and then they would have the amateur race on Sunday for that exact reason. Because it, like you said, I mean, they've built the track to the pros. You bring up 2 things that has to be addressed, and we certainly aren't going to solve it on the show here today, but 2 things that have to be brought up. Number 1, you've got to get your pro card by racing, you've got to get your Supercross pro card by racing an amateur motocross race. That makes no sense. You say to me that I'm not good. Like, if you, let's say that you own a Supercross track and your prerequisite is, hey, you cannot practice on my Supercross track without a pro Supercross card. Okay. So now my ability to practice is minimized. So there's problem number 2. The third thing that you run into is you say that I'm not good enough to practice on your Supercross track, but then you invite 85s to come out and race the premier track on Saturday night. That doesn't make sense. The other side of your question about why doesn't Jerry Robin ever had or never had an opportunity to go factory? Well, no disrespect to Drew Adams, right? He bypassed Jerry Robin for a factory ride. No disrespect to Cole Davies, Hayden Deegan. Jerry Robin was a pro before those guys came through the Futures program. So it's kind of like, and I'm going to take motocross out of the catbird seat. My brother in 1986 was the first guy to graduate from high school and go straight to the pro ranks in the state of Florida. He signed with the Houston Astros. He goes, gets a nice signing bonus. He's playing for a couple of years, AA up to AAA. Well, now this is where you'll see the parallel to motocross. My brother is now 2 to 3 years removed from high school. Well, now there's these teams that have paid these kids that are coming out of college big signing bonuses. So now where my brother got bounced around was, we signed you 2 years ago, $500,000. Well, now we're signing these new kids to $1 million. And because we have $1 million invested in the new college graduates, you get benched, not because of talent, but because of the price and the investment. That's what we're running into here. You have people that are stuck in the middle who didn't get those amateur rides. Then the amateurs that are coming up, they get a factory ride. They get to practice at the Supercross tracks. And then the Jerry Robin is out there battling against a rookie. And I know the classes are different, 250, 450, but this is the problem that so many people talk about. The development program of amateur motocross is not well defined. I'm like you, I don't like to say the word fair because life isn't fair, but we're just dealing with the raw realities. How can you have a guy that is very, very talented, 250 or 450, that gets bypassed? Well, it's because these OEMs have so much money invested in them at an early age. Look at the Star Yamaha program, Gavin Towers. You could go through everybody excluding Deegan. Those guys got an opportunity before everybody else did, but that was because it goes back to the amateur ranks. It wasn't like those 250 guys came out amateur wise and they were quote unquote beating we'll call them veterans that are out there in the 250 class. It's not like somebody's going to come from Loretta's, go to A1 and start beating Jordan Smith and Austin Faulkner and McAdoo and Levi Kitchen. But the reason why these kids on the Team Green, Yamaha, whatever it is, why do they get a chance to even be on factory equipment when someone who's been in the pro ranks there for 5, 6, 7 years, why don't they get it? Well, that's just the way the feeder program is set up. So unfortunately, the tail's wagging the dog because the promoters and the OEMs and the amateur motocross scene, it doesn't really allow for anybody to kind of, you've always going to have those exceptions when you're going to have one person that's able to crack the mold and be able to get into that at some level. But all you've got to do literally for the last 20 years is look at Loretta's and then look at the transition into the pro ranks and then look at what the common denominator is. If you're not on a factory program early on, I'm going to use a statistic here. I don't have it exact. I'd say 97% of the people that are on a factory team once they go pro is because they were there as an amateur at Loretta's. Okay. That's all.
I get it. I get it. And it's the same problem that we have. We've talked a bunch about it. And maybe let me just go out of left field and say, hypothetically, okay, what I would like to see is I want to see, even if it's 10 guys on the track, I want them all to be paid athletes that are making $250,000 to whatever, 7 figures, and they all have incredibly comparable equipment. Okay, what does F1 do? What does MotoGP do? They've got rules that say, hey, you only have this many motors. Hey, you only have this many practice times. Hey, we're all running this spec tire. Hey, boom, boom, boom. And what do we relatively see? We see in MotoGP, do you ever see guys get lapped? No. They're all so fast. Yeah, the guy that's in 22nd place, he might finish the race 10 seconds down, but he's not over a minute, right? And in Supercross, we've seen time and time again where guys come from last to first. Ricky Carmichael's done it. Sexton's done it. Stewart's done it. Like, I want to see talented SOBs on comparable equipment racing. Okay, I don't want to see incredibly talented SOBs on inferior equipment struggle and get in the way of the other riders. And, what happened with Roxon? It wasn't Tristan Lane's fault. It wasn't really Hand's fault. They were racing for a top 15 spot. It was Roxon tried to split him. Yeah, there was a blue flag, and that kind of ended his championship hopes. But I believe, yet again, it was inferior equipment that caused that whole scenario. You have a bike that is able to soak up the sand and is able to run through, and then you have a talented rider like Roxon that is comfortable with that machinery, that's confident in that machinery. He's able to just split those guys, and it's a shame that those guys didn't get out of his way. But without digressing anymore, potentially in a situation like this, if you had like you said, your feeder series, then just the professional series, you got 10 spots, whatever. In the second series, the F2 class, there might not be anybody that's trying to triple into that section, right? Because everyone knows the risk versus reward is too much there, because my motorcycle is not going to be able to soak this up if it goes wrong, if it goes bad. So then there's going to be better racing in that class, and there's going to be closer racing in the 450 class. And we're not going to have situations where lappers, which I hate that word lappers because it's a derogatory term for some of the best athletes in the world, which is silly, right? Get in the way of the guys that have better equipment. And you know, being at the races and everything, and I see what these guys do, I'm more impressed with some of the privateers that come out and bust out these big things because, again, the risk versus reward is higher. And two, they don't have as much time on these types of tracks. You know, they're driving during the week where the other guys have a full set of different motorcycles and mechanics and everyone around them. Of course, they're going to be good. Success happens. Preparation meets opportunity. The factory guys have preparation and they have opportunity. The privateer guys, there are some of them out there, Jerry Robin included, that I believe, given the right opportunity and the right investment for a couple of years, could be the guys that are racing against championships. But that's not how our sport is made, which is so mind-boggling, and I hate it. But I could go on, Coach. And
no, to your point exactly. When Sexton was lapping everybody, and whenever he would pass somebody going through the whoops, it just validates exactly what you're saying. Yeah, he looks like he's on a rocket ship. I mean, he's passing people by 10 miles an hour faster through the whoops. And to your point exactly, the person that Sexton is passing, if we were down at the local track watching him, we'd be like, how could anybody beat this guy? And then you watch how fast Sexton goes by him. Nothing new in our sport. You know, it was, I don't know if you could say it was better or worse when Bailey had his works, you know, 250s and 500s. And, you know, it's, if you go back to the idea, your idea of having a premier class, you know, and then you have your secondary class, not in regards to second class citizens, just you're leveling the playing field of the bike, what the bike can do, the bike's capabilities, the rider's capabilities, makes it safer for everybody. I think it would make for some better racing. Go back to where the factory bikes could bring in the works like the, you know, the RC 500s. And, you know, I just think back to like the Hondas when they had the, you know, hand built frames and they had the gas tanks going all the way down and behind the Kickstarters. And you had some of the most exotic bikes ever, but let that be the premier class, you know, no limits, run what you brung. And then have that second class where, you know, you do have good equipment, the best that we can buy with some of the best riders in the world. But, you know, you've got 20 guys in the premier class. You have 20 guys in, let's call it tier 2. Incredible races to watch, but at least the disparity between first and 10th wouldn't be so bad. To your point, Johnny, we wouldn't see people lapping into the top 10. And I think for the spectators, we would love it because you have 15, 20 guys on that first heat race, or I guess we do it backwards, go all the way up. And yeah, the works unattainable motors, those motorcycles, we all would love to go back through the pits because now we're back looking at bikes that are just incredibly exotic and hand built. And then you have those 3 tiers. I think it's a brilliant idea. I think you'd have better racing. It doesn't take away, unfortunately, what happened to Jerry because it would still be the same equipment, same track, but yeah, that's the hard part for sure.
It's a freak thing. And Michael, no, it's not like he had exceptional equipment. I'm sure Jerry Robin had 8-kit suspension on that's 10, 15 grand suspension. But what it is not is it's not this tried and true R&D unobtainium stuff that the factory bikes have, right? And they get the second tier stuff, you know? So I'm like, if we're going to have guys out there on second tier equipment, even though it's top-notch equipment, it should be a different class. And like, I just want to see the sport transverse into an area where we have works level bikes and rules to make things more of a level playing field, and then have some sort of a sister series that, or not sister series, or just an extra class every weekend. Have the factory 250s, have the factory 450s, but then have this, I don't know what you call it, all-star, you know, local hot shot, whatever series that you call, have all the purse money go to them because nobody gives a shit about winning 16 grand on, you know, does Sexton, maybe Sexton is super pumped about his 16 grand check because KTM might not be paying him until BMW bails them out. But more than likely, they've got their $100,000 to $250,000 bonus check that's clearing, where the 16 grand would be much better spent on giving it to the people that actually pay for the damn sport, right?
Yeah.
Because all the privateers, they're the ones that are actually paying for the equipment. They're not getting stuff for free, where a lot of the factory teams, they're just gimme. I want free stuff. And a lot of people give it to them because of the promotion that they have behind it. I don't know how to fix it. That's just what I would like to see. I would like to see works level bikes, best riders in the world, have 10 riders, whatever, right? Yeah, people say that having 10 guys on the track would be boring. Not really. If you had 10 guys that all could win the race and they were racing back and forth, I don't think that would be that boring. You look at F1, you look at MotoGP, you're only really watching 4 guys to begin with, right? I don't want to watch Sexton have to get around 20 other guys and lap up to 6th. More than anything, I find that just kind of a nuisance.
Think about this, Johnny. And I don't know the math. I certainly don't know all the ins and outs of it. But, we have press day on Friday, right? And we've seen the success of Arena Cross having races on Friday and Saturday. What if you took the track, right? And it was I'm just going to use your analogy. You have a track that is designed for that, let's call it tier 2. And we race on Friday night. And everybody that comes into the stadium, 100% of the people who bought tickets on Friday night, it goes into a purse. And that's what those tier 2 guys would make on Friday night. Then Saturday morning, they build the track up, put it to quote unquote the level 1 spec. To your point, Johnny, the bikes are now in line with the track. The track's in line with the bikes and the equipment, right? Now, all of a sudden, you have that on Saturday night. Again, because a lot of guys don't realize, or a lot of people don't realize the value of some of these contracts. Let's say gear contract. Some of these guys are making $500 to $1 million. Well, do the math. That's nearly $100,000 a month just for wearing gear. Then you go into, a couple $1 million contract. And then, like you said, you've got your win bonuses. All that is what those guys bank on Saturday. Now, do I believe that those tier 1 guys, the top guys that everybody comes to see, should they be getting paid a prize purse? I say absolutely yes. But I also believe the guys that are racing tier 2 on Friday night, they should get a larger piece of the pie as well. It blows my mind that MXGPs have brainwashed people to say, we don't provide you a pro purse, and that's okay. So you're agreeing to come race. And correct me if I'm wrong, Johnny, how much, let me rephrase that. Is there a prize purse for MotoGP? For the Premier?
I don't know.
So I don't know either.
It could be just like MXGP where there is no prize purse.
So if someone in the chat room, they're pretty quick on getting back to us. Let us know, does MotoGP even have a purse, period? Because this is the part that's crazy to me. There is not a single person that goes and plays a ball and stick sport that we're watching on TV that doesn't both have a huge salary and gets a percentage of the TV revenue. I'm not a football guy, but I do know for a fact that when FSU plays and they're on ESPN, the school gets $1 million every time a television show goes off.
Yeah.
The school gets a check for $1 million. So,
well, and coaches, it's a problem that we don't have. We don't have the problem of the demographic of people watching, right? Like ours is very niche. Where if there's 100,000 people watching the race, that is a damn good TV showing. So there's multiple things at play.
But to your, all right, let's run with your thread of thought for just a moment. It's not as if we are on the NBC. We're not on the ESPN at primetime. We're on this ancillary channel that we all pay to watch. And so in my opinion, you brought it up earlier. You're leveling the playing field. when we talk about the idea that some of the TV revenue, okay, let's assume that there's not going to be 10 million people watching the Florida State Florida game. And I understand if we use the economy, if we just use the numbers, right? How much money is the game bringing in? Sponsorship revenue, ad revenue, I should say, for the Florida State game. And then the amount of people that are in the stadium, and then the amount of money that the colleges themselves make. So if we are on, primetime TV, then obviously, well, we would never be there. I guess we are there occasionally. So that's kind of where I have to question. I'm not trying to argue, but I am questioning the numbers because we keep seeing a couple times during the year we're considered on NBC during its prime. Okay. Well, if we're big enough that we can get some time on the NBC during prime time, then I have to question the numbers, because if we had shit numbers, they wouldn't be letting us even get access to that prime time.
Coach, I'm so sorry.
Oh, she's up.
She's been screaming for.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if anyone could hear it, but I could hear her banging on her door, and
oh boy, you better go get her before she breaks loose.
Yeah. I mean,
No,
this
it's all
was one of the
good.
reasons why I changed the podcast from Friday to here, but
that's no, go take care of your little one. I appreciate you putting the show together,
sorry
man.
about this, but hey guys, thank you for joining the podcast again. I know it's been a couple weeks, and life just happened. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me, and I've got some really good content that is coming out either today or tomorrow, and then also as soon as I get more information on Robin and the road to recovery, I will have the link there, because heart goes out to these guys, and sorry, she's just screaming, saying, I need you to talk to me. I need you to talk to me. But anyway,
Yep.
Love you too, Coach. And we'll do another podcast next.
You got it. Go take care of that little one. Thanks, everybody.
All
Hit
right.
that subscribe,
Later, guys.
hit that like button.